Picture this, it's 40 degrees Fahr. At this temperature, Celsius and Fahrenheit actually meet. It's the one point where both scales agree it's unbearably cold. Exposed skin freezes in under 5 minutes. Your breath crystallizes before it even leaves your mouth. And somewhere in this frozen hell, 5,000 years ago, a human being is sleeping outside without matches, without a lighter, and sometimes without fire at all. They survived, not just for one night, for generations. Before we dive into how, hit that like button and subscribe if you love stories about human survival against impossible odds, because what you're about to hear will change how you think about your own cold day complaints forever. Now let's go back. Imagine a small band of early humans crossing the Siberian steppe during the last ice age. No trees for miles, just endless white wind sharp enough to cut skin, and a sky that never seems to warm. Modern science calls this region the Mammoth steppe, a treeless grassland that stretched from France to Alaska. If you dropped a modern human here with nothing but a coat from the store, they'd likely die within hours. Yet archaeologists have found evidence of thriving human settlements right in the middle of this frozen wasteland. How? The answer starts with something most of us walk past every day without a second thought: bones. At a site called Mezhirich in Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered something jaw-dropping. Entire houses built from mammoth bones, not decorated with them, built from them. Skulls stacked as foundations, tusks curved into door frames, and long bones layered like bricks. These weren't crude shelters. They were architectural systems, engineered to block wind and trap warmth, using the only timber available on a landscape with 0 trees. Here's the part that gets left out of most documentaries. Fire, even when available, was often a luxury, not a guarantee. Fuel was scarce. Dung, bone grease, and dried grass had to substitute for wood, and burned much less efficiently. Some nights there simply wasn't enough fuel to keep flames alive till dawn. So the real secret to survival wasn't just fire, it was insulation, body heat, and one deeply human trait: cooperation. Think about that for a second. You're not just fighting the cold, you're fighting it together. Packed in a bone hut with 6 or 7 other bodies, sharing heat like a human furnace. Scientists studying thermoregulation now confirm what these ancient humans intuitively knew: huddling with others can raise perceived warmth by several degrees, purely through shared body heat and reduced airflow. Your ancestors weren't just being social for comfort. They were engineering survival through community. And then there's clothing, but not the kind you're imagining. Forget wool sweaters. We're talking multi-layered animal hide systems, sewn together with bone needles, so fine that some found in Russia are barely thicker than a modern sewing needle. Recent research on Ice Age textiles suggests early humans developed tailored clothing, fitted sleeves, hoods, even underlayers, engineering a personal insulation system centuries before. Thermal wear became a marketing term. Here's the unsettling twist. This wasn't luck. It was iteration. Generation after generation, testing, failing, freezing, adjusting. Every design flaw in a shelter or a coat meant someone didn't wake up the next morning. The bone huts we admire in museums today are really monuments to thousands of quiet, brutal trial and error nights we'll never know about. So next time your heater breaks for one evening and you complain about the cold, remember there were humans who faced 40-degree winters for months, using bones, hides, and each other's body heat as their only technology. But bone huts and hides are only half the story. The real genius, the part that actually kept blood flowing to fingers and toes when fire wasn't an option, is rooted in something even more surprising: human biology itself. Here's something most people don't know. Your body might still carry the genetic leftovers of Ice Age survival. In 2014, scientists sequencing ancient DNA from Siberian populations found something remarkable: genetic adaptations linked to fat metabolism and cold tolerance, some of which trace back tens of thousands of years. Modern populations descended from Arctic and subarctic ancestors, like the Inuit and Siberian Yakut people, carry gene variants that help regulate brown fat activity, the type of fat that burns energy specifically to generate heat rather than store it. In other words, some humans today are still walking around with biological survival tools their ancestors built through generations of brutal winters. But genetics alone doesn't explain how humans without modern fire survived night after night. The deeper answer lies in something researchers call adaptive thermogenesis, the body's ability to physically change how it produces and conserves heat over time. Studies on populations regularly exposed to extreme cold, like traditional Arctic divers, show measurable increases in core temperature regulation Efficiency compared to people from warmer climates. This isn't instant. It's built through repeated exposure, meaning early humans weren't just protected by clothing and shelter. Their very physiology was quietly adapting across a lifetime and across generations. Now here's where it gets even more fascinating. And this is where I want you to pause and think for a second. If you were dropped into that Ice Age world tomorrow, with your modern body, softened by central heating and hot showers, do you think you'd survive a single week? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I read everyone. And I promise the responses on this question always surprise me. Let's talk shelter science, because this is where pivotal discoveries reshaped what we thought we knew. For decades, archaeologists assumed early humans in treeless regions were nomadic wanderers, moving constantly to escape the cold. But excavations at sites like Yana in Arctic Siberia, dated to roughly 32,000 years, ago, revealed something stunning. Long-term semi-permanent settlements. These weren't people running from winter. They were people who had figured out how to make winter livable, using structured shelters, food storage pits dug into permafrost, essentially natural freezers, and layered clothing systems advanced enough to allow extended stationary living. This challenges the old caveman narrative entirely. These weren't desperate survivors barely scraping by. They were engineers, tailors, architects, and community planners, solving one of the hardest environmental puzzles a human has ever faced, thousands of years before agriculture, writing, or the wheel. And here's a psychological layer researchers are only recently emphasizing. Survival in extreme cold wasn't purely physical, it was deeply social. Anthropological studies of modern, Arctic-adjacent communities show that emotional bonding and group trust directly correlate with survival outcomes in cold environments. Isolation in extreme cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous, both physiologically and psychologically. Which means those ancient humans huddled in bone huts weren't just sharing heat. They were building the earliest foundations of what we'd now call emotional resilience and community. Mental health, traits we still rely on today, just repackaged in modern life as support systems. So when you strip it all down, ancient humans beat 40° Earth using a combination most people never expect: adapting biology, ingenious materials science, and most powerfully each other. Here's the truth that should stop you in your tracks. The same biological and psychological systems that kept humans alive at 40° Earth are still running inside you right now, just dormant, buried under central heating, insulated jackets, and a world engineered to remove discomfort entirely. Modern researchers studying cold exposure have found something fascinating. Controlled, brief cold exposure can reactivate brown fat activity in adults, essentially waking up a survival mechanism your ancestors relied on constantly. This is part of why practices like cold showers and cold plunges have exploded in popularity, not as a trend, but as a rediscovery. People are unknowingly reaching back tens of thousands of years, reactivating biological hardware built by humans who had no other choice. But the deeper takeaway isn't physical, it's psychological. Ancient survival in extreme cold depended heavily on cooperation, trust, and shared responsibility. In a world where loneliness is now classified by health researchers as a serious public health concern, there's something almost poetic about the fact that our ancestors' greatest survival tool wasn't a weapon or fire. It was each other. The bone hut wasn't just shelter. It was proof that community itself is a survival technology, one we've quietly been losing touch with in an age of individual convenience. Think about the modern implications here. Engineers today studying passive insulation, materials that trap heat without any active energy source, are drawing inspiration from ancient shelter design when developing sustainable housing for extreme climates. Textile researchers analyzing ancient tailoring techniques have influenced modern thermal wear design, proving that a 20,000-year-old bone needle indirectly shaped the jacket you might be wearing right now. History isn't just something we look back on. It's quietly built into the products, science, and even survival instincts we use today. And here's the surprising truth that ties this whole story together. Ancient humans didn't conquer 40° through brute strength or luck. They conquered it through adaptation, ingenuity, and connection. 3 things that had nothing to do with physical toughness and everything to do with intelligence and cooperation. In many ways, they weren't primitive. They were some of the most resourceful problem solvers our species has ever produced, engineering survival with nothing but bone, hide, fat, and each other. So the next time winter feels unbearable, or you're tempted to complain about a cold commute, remember there were humans who faced true, unforgiving Arctic cold for months at a time, with zero modern technology, and they didn't just survive. They built families, communities, and futures in the middle of it. If this story shifted how you see human resilience even a little, make sure you're subscribed, because this channel is built entirely around uncovering stories like this. Moments where history reveals just how extraordinary, adaptable, and quietly brilliant our ancestors really were. And if you're wondering what other impossible environments early humans conquered, wait until you see our next video, so don't miss it.